Oh my, looks like I got ahead of myself. By way of introduction, my name is Bob Lee, and I am a retired Florida game warden. I spent over 3 decades working as a water patrol officer on the St. Johns River and as a land patrol lieutenant in Putnam, St. Johns, and Flagler counties. As a freelance writer, I have been published in Flamingo, Florida Sportsman, International Game Warden, and other publications. I am also the author of 2 nonfiction books published by the University Press of Florida. Backcountry Lawman, True Stories from a Florida Game Warden, and Bad Guys, Bullets, and Boat Chases, True Stories of Florida Game Wardens. Even though these books have similar themes, they are distinctly different. Backcountry Lawman is a compilation of my first-person experiences, the officers I worked with, and the poachers we caught, and sometimes didn't catch. I write of my unusual relationship with the most notorious poacher in Putnam County. His name is Roger Gunter. If I were to sum him up in a single soundbite, I would ask you to imagine a cross between a fictional Crocodile Dundee and a modern-day Daniel Boone. That's Roger Gunter. I also tell of a terrifying moment earlier in my career when my patrol boat sank in the Ocklawaha River at midnight and I was left riding out atop a 6-gallon gas can through a gauntlet of alligators, literally. Another chapter describes one of the biggest environmental busts in Florida history. That was when Amtrak passenger trains was dumping their poop upon unsuspecting anglers fishing beneath the Buffalo Bluff Railroad Bridge crossing the St. Johns River. This case took up 14 months of my life, beginning in the spring of 1988 and ending in the fall of 1989. Ultimately, the United States government paid $85 million to retrofit 544 rail cars with new holding tanks, and today Amtrak doesn't dump anywhere or on anybody. I affectionately call this chapter the Choo-Choo Poo-Poo case. For Bad Guys, Bullets, and Boat Chases, I put on my journalism cap and spent 3 years interviewing working and retired officers from one end of the state to the other, beginning in Live Oak, 22 miles south of the Georgia line, down to the Everglades, over to the vast cattle ranches west of Lake Okeechobee, farther west to the rich inshore fishing grounds around Pine Island, up to the Kissimmee River Marsh, Lake Apopka, Volusia County, St. Augustine, Putnam County, and Horseshoe Beach, up in the Big Bend region of the state. Some people think that all wildlife officers do is check fishing licenses, but this book tells a very different story. One of shootouts, rescue, survival, powerboat chases, tracking black market gator poachers, jumping out through truck windows, shredding boat propellers on underwater logs, ferrying crates of baby sea turtles, and being pinned beneath a 500-pound all-terrain vehicle at the bottom of a sinkhole. These are just some of the situations that game wardens find themselves in. So today I brought some tools of the trade with me. That would be the poaching trade. Thought we'd circle around and start with the trap that I threw off at the very beginning of my presentation. This is called a steel trap, also known as a leg hole trap. They are used to catch fur bearers, a fur bearer being a raccoon, fox, bobcat, otter. And you can tell that this is a particularly nasty device because of the fence staples welded in it. Interestingly, Florida was the first state to make them illegal back in 1974, mainly because they are inhumane. Best example I can give you of that is in my personal experience. I used to look for these types of traps, and they're always set in a line. We call them a trap line. And I can remember a couple of instances coming up on traps that had been thrown like this, and the only thing remaining in it was the paw of a raccoon that had been chewed off. And so, again, inhumane, and very illegal in the state of Florida. This is a spike. It's a homemade spike, and it's made from a steel pipe with probably what looks like a concrete nail that's been stamped in it and sharpened at the end. Now, the bad guys set these out at the entrances to gates to properties they don't want us to enter. And they bury them until the spike is exposed. The hope is that we will drive over them, puncture the tire, deflate the tire, and hopefully deflate us as well. That's not how it works. If anything, at least in my own experience, I find it inspiring when somebody tries to do this, and it just makes you work all that much harder to catch them. What a lot of folks don't know, that the setting of these devices and the vandalism of state equipment and a game warden's personal property has gone on for many, many decades. In my own example, and the officers I used to work with, one of their favorite little tricks would be to cut an automatic transmission line, cut a brake line, loosen the lug nuts on a boat trailer tire, and even more personally, one year there were so many simplex roofing nails dumped into my driveway going to that home where my wife and I lived, that 1 week I took in 13 tires to be repaired, my tires to be repaired, and the record for the most nails in one tire was 22. Now, this not only affected me, it also affected the mailman, the newspaper lady, and my neighbors. All of them suffered because of it. I also know of a guy who had a live rattlesnake stuffed in his mailbox. I mention this to show that oftentimes we do more than just check fishing licenses. This is an electronic shocking device. In the lexicon of the outlaw commercial fishermen on the St. Johns River, it is also called a monkey machine. And I'll get to that in a moment as to how it came by that label. It works like this. There's electric motor, a shaft between the electric motor and a magneto. The motor drives the magneto. There are two wires coming out of the magneto that are draped on either side of the boat and drop down to the bottom. The tip of the wire is peeled back to bare copper. From the motor, there are two wires that go to a very large battery. When the machine is turned on, it emits a very powerful shock. When the fish swim between the tips of the wires, obviously they become stung, and instinctively they swim to the surface where they flitter around and flutter kind of in a half-stunned state. It's at this time that the commercial fishermen will use a long-handled dip net and rake them in with an overhand motion and dump them out into the boat. A two-man crew who knows what they're doing in a 4-hour period can catch 600 pounds of fish. Now, the reason it's called monkey fishing is because the first device did not have a motor to drive it. What they did was they pulled out a 5-bar magneto from an antique telephone with the handle. They'd mount that to a board, so one guy would be in the boat furiously turning the handle to emit the charge, and that left only one guy to run back and forth to dip the fish. And so some people looking at this thought that it kind of resembled the 18th, 19th century organ grinder on the corner with the handle spinning it while his monkey was out in front of him with a tin cup begging for pennies. Thus the term monkey fishing. Finally, I brought what appears to be just a plain or ordinary looking kind of box with a hole in the front. What this is a flying squirrel trap. The people who set these out do not kill the squirrels. Their intent is to capture them alive and sell them illegally into the pet trade. This particular device has a door, opens up, you put nesting material in it. Oftentimes it's hung from a tree on a turkey oak ridge, a high sand ridge. Flying squirrels love old turkey oaks, particularly the dead ones that have been hollowed out by a woodpecker, and they'll make a nest in there. Flying squirrels don't actually have wings. Instead, they have flaps that kind of attach to their feet and allows them to glide. And they are nocturnal. You will not see them in the daytime. But the real reason I brought this with me today is because I have news, fresh off the press, so to speak. In a National Geographic article dated September 15th of this year, which is 2020, they tell of a huge bust that was made in Sumter County on a guy named Rodney Knox and his crew. Now, Rodney Knox had an elaborate scheme to catch flying squirrels. He'd send his men out throughout the state, and they would put out up to 10,000 traps. Over the course of a several-year period, Rodney sold over $500,000 worth of flying squirrels. Here's how it worked. A courier would come into Sumter County, where Rodney lived, pick up a load of flying squirrels and transport them to Georgia. From Georgia, another courier would pick them up and transport them to Illinois. From Illinois, they were flown into South Korea, where ultimately they were sold into the retail pet trade. I kind of have a little bit of an inside scoop on this because one of my good friends was one of the undercover officers involved on this arrest. And the other reason I mention it is I wanted to let everybody know that we do more than just chase deer poachers and gator poachers. We also follow the money, particularly when it involves a black market scheme with big money. And that's what our investigators did. It was a great case, and if anybody has the opportunity, they should check out the story. So before I close, I would like to say that for anybody who is interested in learning more about me or my books, please go to my website, bobhlee.com. I also love to do Zoom, and if anybody would like to invite me to do a virtual book talk, you can reach me through the contact page of my website. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation. Thank you so much for watching.